Good morning and welcome to the Daily Light Devotion. I hope all of you have had a wonderful Sunday and looking forward to today. That is the 22nd of September, and looking forward for this week. Um, Today we're going to start Acts 20, chapter 27. We're going to look at verses 1 to 8, and the title is Steadfast in the Storm's Beginning. So Paul now has become a prisoner heading towards Rome, right, to see Caesar, and his sea journey begins in these verses. And we see the voyage starts with difficulty, contrary winds, delays, dangerous conditions, right? It also reminds us that what Jesus said in John 16:33, in this world you will have problems, but take heart that I have overcome them. So Paul was facing difficulties, right? It was not smooth sailing for him. We can see in these verses. But when challenges often appear at the beginning, what it does is prepares our hearts, if we're walking with God, to trust Him, to depend on Him for His guidance. And that's what we're going to learn here. Verse 1 says, "And when it was decided that we should sail to Italy, they delivered Paul and some other prisoners to one named Julius, a centurion of the Augustan regiment." So though Paul was in chain, he was still in God's will, right? And he was heading to Rome because he had to, go to Rome for a purpose, God's purpose, right? So the circumstances don't limit God's purpose. Remember, we can be in chains like Paul, but God can achieve, uh, His will. I remember many people being put to jail for their faith, and that you know jail, whoever was there, all the prisoners, these preachers or these leaders started sharing the gospel and fulfilling God's will for them. I'm not saying that was what God's will is, but when you're in God's, when you depend on God, He gives you opportunities to share the gospel. And we've heard many stories like this, because why? They're so soaked and they know that is, they can make whatever situation is this they are in. When they give it to God, God will use that situation. And many people have got saved in jail because they put a preacher or they put a Christian, uh, you know, um, for sharing the gospel or XYZ reason, and by false accusation. And God has used those situations to save many people. So here also Paul, though he's in chain, we'll see further how God comes through for him. Verses 2 says, "So entering the ship of Adramyttium, we put to sea," meaning to sail along the coast of Asia. Aristarchus, a Macedonian of Thessalonica, was with us. So Paul was not alone. Luke was with him. And this Aristarchus from Thessalonica was a Macedonian, traveled with him. So that's so amazing about, um, there were people in his toughest seasons, Paul's toughest seasons, encourage Paul and speak about Jesus and share about Jesus. I'm sure the ship, every conversation they had was about glorifying Jesus, and that's what Paul's heart was. And because he had company, right? Uh, and Luke was there with him because Luke is the writer of the book of Acts, right? As we know. Verse 3 says, "And the next day we landed at Sidon, and Julius treated Paul kindly and gave him liberty to go to his friends and receive care." So even Roman centurion showed Paul kindness. God can move the hearts of the most stern, and these centurions were very strict. They had to follow orders. They would not move left and right. So he got liberty to go and spend time with Julius and Aristarchus. Um, so these are so that he could spend time and also receive care from, just encouragement. Verses 4 and 6. "We put to sea from there, and we sailed under the shelter of Cyprus because the winds were contrary. There was there the centurion found an Alexandria ship sailing to Italy, and he put us on board." So the winds opposed them, but God redirected them to a larger ship bound for his intended destination. So obstacles can become redirection sometimes when we give it to God, right? We ask God for guidance, and what resist we may our resistance, wherever we face resistance, right, may lead us closer to God's plan. And that's what we're seeing here unfold. Verses 7 to 8 says, when we had sailed slowly many days, the wind not permitting us to proceed, we sailed under the shelter of Crete of Salomon. Passing it with difficulty, we came to a place called Fair Heavens. So progress was slow and difficult, right? But God was positioning Paul for what was ahead. And delays are not denials, right? God uses them to prepare our hearts, prepare us for even a greater journey. So, what are some of the life applications that I can take from here? We don't need to confuse hardship with the absence of God. He's, when we are focused and we are in mission for Him, right? He's at work, even if the circumstances look different. We must know the nature of God, that He's working all things for our good, right? Uh, we, companionship, we should treasure companionship He gives us during trials for encouragement. Community is a part of His provision, right? So that's why it's important to be a part of a local church where there are people standing with us, praying with us when we're in missions, right? And we face difficulties. They become a source of our encouragement because they're godly people too, right? We need to recognize His mercy is unexpected places. Even unbelievers can be a channel of kindness. Um, you know, God will use anybody to encourage us if we are walking again. The criteria is we're walking in His will, His purpose, right? Uh, though God does help us when we are in a situation when we're not walking and making our own decisions, but then again, that becomes, that because God is merciful. Um, but what happens is that we need to get back to God's will, right? To walk in what He's called us for, to fulfill the purpose. That's what our life's goal should be. We, we need to know that delays and difficulties are not God's denial. God is preparing us for a greater impact. God is preparing us to become, to handle the situations where, things get, God is, when God gives us, it's much bigger than our human mind can think. And these difficulties are challenges in the world prepare us in trusting Him more, seeking His guidance, and being single minded about His purpose. So I want to encourage you. Acts chapter 27, verse 1 to 8 shows that even the journey into storms is under God's hand when we are submitted to His purpose. Right? The winds may be against us, progress may be slow, but His plans is unfolding step by step. Just as Paul's chains could not hinder the gospel, neither can our present trials hinder God's destiny for us. So that's what I want to encourage you with today. I hope you have a wonderful Monday, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.